Welcome back to the Pulse with Peter B. Peter Biancamano, back in the host chair and still here at the gorgeous Mile Square Theater located at 1400 Clinton Street. And we want to thank Kevin and Peter for doing that awesome job last segment. I am going to finally give Josh his working papers out the door, the pink slip, and Kevin and Peter are invited back anytime. But a person who's always excited to come on the show, I believe, is our third ward councilman, Mr. Michael Russo. Great to see you, brother.
You too.
How's it going?
Very good, man.
Exactly. Michael, you know, we like to have a lot of fun on this show.
Absolutely.
But as of this filming, it is a Tuesday this week. Last night, there was a tragic incident that occurred at the Hoboken Housing Authority where a young man, I believe 21 years old, unfortunately was shot and killed.
Yes.
You've been on the council over 20 years. I think you're pushing close to 25 years, if I'm not mistaken. Your father, of course, was mayor here. This is an isolated incident in Hoboken, correct?
Yeah, it was an isolated incident, but it's one of those things that we always want to be aware of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So through the years, we've had different incidents like this happen at the Housing Authority. Hopefully, they will always be these one-off types of shootings. But it really is a tragedy for our city. This was a young man who had an amazing life ahead of him. He was a graduate of Hoboken High, played sports here. He was in the prime of his life, and unfortunately for this ridiculous incident, this young man now lost his life, and someone else is going to lose theirs because of this travesty. So it's horrible.
It really, really is. And for residents at home, Michael, can you assure them that crime is not going up in Hoboken?
Yeah, and that's always the first thing that
Violent
we're
crime,
asked.
that is.
Yeah,
Sorry.
correct.
Yes. Yeah.
Most specifically, violent
Right.
crime. It's always the first thing that we get asked as leaders in the city. Is it safe for my child to go play at Mama Johnson Field? Is it safe for my teenage daughter to walk down on Jackson Street? And the short answer is, of course it is. We always want to be vigilant. We always want to make sure that we're safe. We always want to make sure that we have eyes and ears around the city and make sure that our kids are doing what they need to do. But overall, the city is safe. Our police force does a tremendous job. There's always room for improvement, and we'll continue to make those improvements as we need to.
All right, well, moving on, Michael, because there's always hot topics in Hoboken.
Sure.
And the first hot topic has been talked about on this show multiple times through Ron Simoncini, who, of course, is the executive director of the Mile Square Taxpayers Association, and Cheryl Fallick, who is the spokeswoman of the Hoboken Fair Housing Alliance, who will be on next week's show, by the way. There's a referendum out there. From what Ron said to us just a few weeks ago, there are enough signatures for it to go out to the ballot, but it's really first up to the city council to try to make amends before it goes out to the voters of Hoboken. Where do we stand?
Yeah, so a little different than how you explained it. There are signatures. There is no referendum as of yet, but we all know that that's coming, right? So we're not trying to kid anybody that I was
jumping the gun. I'm
sorry.
Yeah,
they're most likely going to submit those signatures, and there will be a referendum. The city council then has the opportunity to kind of sit down, talk to all parties, and see if we can come up with some legislation that everyone would be happy to support. Last year, we were able to do that with not only two of the members that you spoke of. One was Ron Simoncini and Cheryl Fallick. They were able to get in a room who we never thought would ever get in a room and accomplish something. And they brought forth some legislation that was passed. Unfortunately, the mayor decided that it wasn't something that he wanted to support, so it was vetoed. So now we're back in the situation, and we want to make sure that we get it right. And that's really the goal here. We want to make sure we get it right, not just for landlords and not just for tenants, but for everybody in the city of Hoboken.
And hopefully this was a lesson learned by the administration, and like you said, you'd want to try to get it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were in the headlines, Michael, a lot after the last city council meeting. You basically raised your voice, I'm trying to be pleasant here, to a fellow councilman at large, Joe Quintero, about a comment he made at a committee meeting disparaging Italian Americans.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, I'm Italian-American like you. My parents, of course, were born in Italy. Hearing this kind of shocked me because I know Joe. And I don't really see kind of a prejudiced bone in his body, but who knows what was said. I mean, you were in that committee meeting. I was just wondering if you want to elaborate possibly.
Yeah, sure. And look, I know Joe too, right? And I respect him and I like him. I still like him. It was just one of those things that, he made a comment, and it was an off-color comment, and we were in the privacy of a committee meeting, and I took it to offense. You know, I've grown up my entire life, and you know, you hear those, hey Goomba, how you doing, right? Joey Bag of Donuts, this, that, the other thing, and at some point that starts to get to you.
Right.
And if you're out in a social setting, it's not as offensive. But when you're in an official committee meeting and you're talking about a garbage contract in the city of Hoboken, and the owners of that garbage company happen to be Italian Americans, it becomes more offensive. And you know, at that point, I really wasn't going to make a big deal out of it, but things escalated at the last council meeting, and some comments were made. I don't know if the mics picked up on them, but I most certainly heard Joe, and I got offended again, and I brought that to light. And it was just one of those things that I'm tired of people making those disparaging comments, even when they try to backpedal and say, well, it's not really what I meant, or it's not really how you know, how you took it. Well, please don't ever tell me how to take something, especially if you're a non-Italian American. I like to hear all the non-Italian Americans tell me, well, that's really not a big deal, right?
Right.
For me, it is. And it was something that, you know, came about the way it did. But
And what's the aftermath now? Have you guys spoke since the meeting?
you
or-
know, briefly, and I'm sure we'll speak again. You know, and look, the only thing I've asked of Joe and anyone else that makes comments like that, acknowledge what you did, acknowledge it was a mistake, say you're sorry. We're forgiving people, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a big deal at that point, but everyone has to be held to account.
Absolutely. I do want to touch up on this. There is, of course, the congressional race coming up between the Hoboken Mayor, Ravi Bala. There will be a forum coming up for all you at home. Stay tuned to your social media platforms for that, against the incumbent Rob Menendez Jr. You came out and you supported Rob Menendez Jr. just recently, about a few weeks ago or so. You know, the mayor supported you in the past for your council race. What steered you towards the incumbent in this race?
Yeah, for me, you know, there's always a choice in an election. I know it's been getting a little heated amongst the two candidates and their supporters. It's not the way I approach things, right? I look at the candidates. I think Rob has done an exceptional job as our congressman in such a short time. He's brought a ton of money back to our district, specifically Hoboken, right? Like, I mean, I know we as council members, we love to always, you know, sit up tall and tout all of our accomplishments, but there's always people behind us, right? There's the levels of the county and the state and the federal government, and Rob has been a partner in all of that, and that was one of the main reasons why I think he really deserves to be elected for a second term.
Absolutely. And Michael, you know, the mayoral race in Hoboken is coming up in about, I would say, what, about a year and a half, a little less than a year and a half, if I'm not mistaken.
19 months.
19 months, yeah, who's counting? Anyway, what would you like to see, what direction would you like to see the city go between now and next November's race, when it's called silly season in the city?
And listen, Pete, that's a show in itself, right? So, I mean, I would love to get into all of that, but the main point that I always make to everyone is that there are policies that are in place that are working, and we want to continue to see them work. But there are policies that just aren't, and we need to make those changes. Some very significant policies that I think are really important is housing in the city of Hoboken. You know, when going back to the rent control issue, right? People talk about rent control as if they were talking about affordable housing. For me, I think that those elected officials who tout that as an affordable housing initiative are scared to make a real decision when it comes to affordable housing. We need to build affordable housing, not just for low income, not just for very low income, but for middle income. We need our teachers, our firefighters, our police officers, our nurses, our servers. They all need to be housed in the city that they work. Because right now they get in their car and they drive out of Hoboken during rush hour.
Wow.
And that gets into the traffic and transportation issue in Hoboken as well, right?
Totally.
So a lot of these things are really intertwined, and it's really important that we kind of address them all.
All right. Well, Councilman, we are over time, but I'm not going to let you off the hook here. I brought up the mayoral race coming up in 2025. You have raised a significant amount of money. I think it's somewhere in the 200,000, 220,000 range. Are you willing to give your good buddy that you've known for over 20 years a Pulse exclusive today announcing your candidacy for mayor?
Peter, I've told you this in the past. I will tell you again. I will serve this city in any capacity that my constituency sees fit, whether that's a councilman, whether that's the dog catcher, whether that's the mayor or anything else. But Hoboken is my home, and that's where I am, and that's where I'll always be.
All right. I'll take that answer since we're over time. All right. Third Ward Councilman Michael Russo, you're invited here anytime.
Thank you.
Please.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you,
All right.
man.